April 1945. Nazi Germany is collapsing. White flags hang from windows. Towns are surrendering without a fight. American troops roll in, expecting the war to be all but over. But something feels off. Then it happens. A single shot cracks through the silence. An officer drops. Another shot. This time a medic goes down. The enemy isn't in uniform. He isn't on a battlefield. He's hiding behind a white flag. What follows is one of the most controversial and ruthless tactical shifts of World War II. No warnings, no negotiations. Entire buildings reduced to rubble in seconds. Patton's breaking point. General Patton wasn't known for hesitation. He was aggressive, decisive, and, deeply protective of his men. When reports of these tactics reached him, he didn't see clever resistance. He saw betrayal of the laws of war. In his view, anyone fighting without a uniform and hiding among civilians wasn't a legitimate soldier. They were unlawful combatants. And that distinction really mattered. Patton's response was immediate and uncompromising. If a town claimed surrender but fired on American troops, it forfeited protection. Instead of sending infantry into deadly close-quarters combat, tanks would handle it. Buildings suspected of harboring attackers would be destroyed. And fighters caught in civilian clothes after attacking US forces would not be treated as prisoners of war. The impact on the battlefield was immediate. American troops stopped taking risks, clearing buildings room by room. Armor was brought forward. A sniper's position wasn't assaulted, it was obliterated. Church towers used for ambushes were blown apart. Farmhouses suspected of attacks were reduced to ash. This wasn't random destruction. It was calculated deterrence. The message was simple. If you fight from behind a civilian disguise or a false surrender, you will not get a second chance. And honestly, it worked. The attacks began to drop off. The confidence of these hidden fighters collapsed once they realized the Americans would not hesitate to respond with overwhelming force. The legal and moral grey zone. Here's where the story becomes complicated. Under the laws of war at the time, combatants were required to distinguish themselves from civilians. Fighting in civilian clothing while conducting attacks blurred that line, and often placed those fighters outside the protections granted to regular soldiers. But the execution of captured individuals without trial and the destruction of buildings in populated areas remain deeply controversial. Some historians argue that these actions crossed ethical lines, punishing entire areas for the actions of a few. Others argue that the alternative, sending young soldiers into deadly traps repeatedly, would have resulted in far greater loss of life. This wasn't a clean decision. It was a brutal calculation made in the final chaotic weeks of a devastating war. Why the strategy worked. The Werewolf program depended on one assumption, that American forces would continue to follow conventional rules no matter what. Once that assumption collapsed, so did the effectiveness of the insurgency. Fear replaced confidence. Fighters who once relied on deception now faced immediate and overwhelming retaliation. The risk no longer matched the reward. In the end, the insurgency never grew into the widespread resistance the Nazis had hoped for. It faded quickly as Allied forces tightened control and the German population faced the reality of total defeat. Final thoughts? Ruthless or necessary? Patton's approach forces a difficult question. Was it justified to respond to unlawful tactics with such extreme measures? Or did those actions blur the very line that separates disciplined armies from the chaos of total war? There's no simple answer. What is clear is that these decisions were made in real time, under extreme pressure, with lives on the line every single day. For the soldiers on the ground, the priority was survival. For commanders like Patton, it was ending the war as quickly and decisively as possible. Call to action. If this story made you rethink what you know about the final days of World War II, don't stop here. Like the video, share it with someone who appreciates real military history, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Was Patton justified, or did he go too far? And if you want more deep, unfiltered breakdowns of history's most intense moments, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss what comes next.